I realised when you move to a new country, you have those feelings of feeling isolated and not quite, you want to be part of that community, of that society. I walked into a museum and I realised in this exhibition that I saw that there was a painting. I looked closely at the painting, and it was of a guy called Laird Iqbal Singh, who's a Scottish laird, and I realised that we actually have Sikh tartan in Scotland, and that immediately made me feel, well, I have a place in Scotland somehow, in somewhere. So that kind of opened up the doors and made me realise the potential of what museums can do.
I've always had a passion for history. I've loved looking at photographs, objects from early age, and wondering what stories were behind them. And I just believe museums are there to tell these stories, and I want to be part of that story making.
I have been brought up to think of museums as being a fun place and a good place to spend time from lots of visits with my family, particularly to the Yorvik Viking Centre. Inspired me a lot when I was about 5 and going around on their time cars. And so when I was looking for a career, I thought I would like to work somewhere that I would find a pleasant place to work and a bit different to an office, and museums were the obvious choice.
When I saw Picasso's Guernica for the first time, I mean, that was a work that for a lot of people, and for me included, had a kind of an effect on me, and there's so much to learn from it, and it's so symptomatic of a certain period in time. And it's so visually stimulating. All those elements need to be told, and you need someone. I'm a big believer in the art not speaking by itself. I think you should have someone there talking about it and describing it to as many different audiences as possible. So that's why I got into museums and galleries.
I guess the main inspiration for me, something I've recently discovered, was my Auntie Pat. She was a compulsive collector, and she taught me when I was little. I broke something of hers, and she said that I need to learn the value of objects and start collecting things for myself. And so I did, and so that was probably the main inspiration behind me working with collections and working in museums.
Well, it was definitely my parents. When we were younger, I'm one of 4, and my parents would always think of things for us to do, and one of the favourite things for us to do was to go to castles, because we're very energetic children, so they take us to a castle, let us run around like crazy until we had no energy left, and then when we calmed down a bit, my dad would tell us stories and facts about the castles, and so those memories of when I was young of really enjoying myself and getting a lot out of history. When I was older, I thought, what would I like to do? And I thought being part of the process of getting children into history and art is the sort of thing I'd really like to do. And so I guess that's what really inspired me and motivated me.
I think it was the big model of the blue whale in the Natural History Museum. When I was a kid, when I was about 7, I remember that being my birthday treat to go to that museum, which is, I know that's incredibly geeky, but that was it.
It was actually a visit to a museum when I was 16, to the Imperial War Museum in London, and actually being able to see real objects and interact with them, and that sort of led me into history, and then developed into a job in a museum and working up from there.
I have a very unusual sort of beginning. I was actually brought up in a museum from the age of 8, and so whenever I wasn't at school, I was in a museum, and that's what first inspired me, because I was able to get behind the scenes in every department.
I think early on I was always taken to museums and castles and things as a child, so my parents had a big influence, and I work in museum education, and I remember going on school visits as a child to museums and noticing that there was a person there leading the group, and obviously a person involved in that in the museum, which intrigued me and made me think that was something I wanted to do.
After doing a humanities degree, I just basically fancied doing it. It just seemed like a good sector to work in, and that's it.